We happen to be in a church, and what a magnificent setting this is here at the Gospel Lighthouse. It is simply inspiring to be here. And further inspiration comes from the good work of the people at the Greater Dallas Justice Revival. And this fine lady is the board chair of the Greater Dallas Justice Revival, but that's not all. Carrie Boren is the director of evangelism for the Episcopal Diocese of Dallas, quite the up-and-comer in the Lausanne movement, started by Dr. Billy Graham. Join me in welcoming Carrie Boren. Give her a big hand, please. Carrie, it's nice to have you. And the floor is yours.
The goal of this debate this evening is to rally faith-based communities to help the next mayor achieve his objectives. We are all gathered here this evening for that purpose. There's a large segment of our population in Dallas who share common values and common beliefs through their faith, and hundreds of organizations created to help the needy. With that in mind, I have a couple of questions for you. If you are elected mayor, what programs do you intend to seek the support of faith-based communities? And what are you going to ask these organizations to do?
Mr. Rawlings, let's start with you and work our way reverse-wise up past there. Go ahead, Mike, begin.
First of all, I loved your predicate for that question because the faith-based community can do so much. As I've gone around the city, and I always knew this, but it came to me in a deep existential way of how serious we can change things with the faith-based community. And at times they are not rallied. At times there are pockets of them. So I think that's important. You know, the big issue on the plate is, and we'll talk about economic growth, we'll talk about the crime issues that we've got, but the big issue is human services. What is the role of the city in tight times and not so tight times? Some people say it's the county's job to deal with human services. So to me, I think we've got to start with the homeless, okay? We've got to start with pre-K children, and we've got to start with the incarcerated that are coming out of those prisons and saying, how do we work that triangle to make sure they get the civic support, to make sure they get any budgetary things we've got, because the feds are going to be cutting our budgets on the community development block grants. And so it's not going to be just the city, it's going to be at the federal and the state level as well. And I think we need to rally and have a discussion with that faith-based community on how we kind of fill those pockets in. I think we can't do it without it.
Mr. Okpa?
You say, let's take numbers, $50 million, just for the ease of analysis. If you compare $50 million to $2.7 million, what is the percentage of that? It's less than 3%. If you look at every item in our budget and you do a regressional analysis of 2%, because what is a deficit? Deficit is what you are short of. If you regress every item in the budget by that amount of money, you will address the issue of $40 or $50 million. But the other thing that I want to bring to mind is this. Faith calls for sacrifice. Money is never enough. If you give us $2 million, we want $3 million. If you give us $4 million, we want $5 million. That's Oliver Twist in English literature. I want some more. Times are hard in our country. And we have to make the sacrifice because nobody will lay off their spouse or their kids when money is short. We make an adjustment. That's what this leadership will call on Dallas. There's nothing to be cut off from the budget, but we call on the people to make the sacrifice because as a faith-based organization, you function on sacrifice. America was built on sacrifice. Some of the great things America did was when no state had a budget of $1 billion. So we can address $50 million. It's no money. Thank you.
Mr. Natinsky.
You know, the city, like anybody else, whether it's individual homeowner or business, we have to be able to live within our budgeted amounts. This budget season is going to be tough, but I don't think it's going to be near as bad as what we've had the last couple of years. One of the big unknowns is there's legislation in the state in Austin right now that could dip into the city's pocket for as much as $40 million, maybe as much as $50 million. If that happens, if we're unable to defeat that legislation, and the state wants to balance their budget on the backs of the city, we're going to have a very, very serious problem. We have to be able to prioritize and focus on what we're doing. Fortunately, our sales tax revenues are increasing. I'm not one of those that believes that our property values are going to continue to go down to great extents over the next couple of years. I think we've leveled off. The last 4 years alone, we've managed to grow our tax base by 17%. So I think we've turned the corner on this. It's going to be tough. We're going to have to prioritize. We're going to have to learn how to do things more efficiently. We're going to have to be able to deliver good quality services at a lesser cost. And I think if we do that, we'll be in a good shape to where we don't have to cut essential services, provide what people need, starting with public safety and working our way through the menu.
Mr. Kunkle.
Yeah, the city's budget is going to be cut, like the state's budget and the federal budget, and many of the programs that are going to be cut are those that affect the poor, the mentally ill, the homeless, and the disadvantaged. And it's critical that the faith-based community steps up. There's things that private sector can do better, things that the public sector does better, and things that the faith-based community does better. But I think without the faith-based community, nonprofit sectors stepping up, that these are going to be some of the worst times we've seen for people that need help, the mentally ill, the homeless, and children. Thank you.